I should go get my tie for the car.
I went to the
You guys are all
breakfast
set.
this morning, which is why
Thank
I
you.
don't trust
Thank you,
them.
Joe.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'll be in and out.
Okay, thank you.
You can call the meeting to order, please. Call the roll.
Chairman Restaino,
Here.
Vice Chairman Updegrove,
Here.
Secretary Casale,
Here.
roll call complete.
Thank you so much. And the roll call was given to us by,
Margaret Denning.
Yeah, just so you know, Scott, and everybody else, Margaret Denning, is our new account clerical for this office. She replaced Jackie Minicucci. As many of you know, Jackie retired, so we want to welcome Margaret and thank her for joining us to record all the great stuff that goes on at these meetings.
yes,
Thanks.
in your packet, you'll see the letter from Jackie too. Okay, if you haven't, take a few minutes to review the minutes from the March 11th meeting. And then obviously, ask if there's any additions, corrections, at all to the minutes. And if not, I get a motion.
I'll move it.
Vice Chairman, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, again, you have seen the letter from Jackie. It's in the packet. It was always a pleasure to work with her. She kept things in really tight ship, and I know Margaret will be able to do the same for us while we're here. Amy, taking a look at the budget.
Sure. If we want to, Jackie resigned as the treasurer, so I think before there was a formal vote to appoint Jackie actually as the treasurer. So is that something we probably should do, Scott, for Market?
Yes. I'll move it.
I'll second. Call the roll, please.
Chairman Restaino,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Updegrove,
Yes.
Secretary Casale,
Yes.
roll call complete.
Thank you. Yes, congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So on to the next item, the review and adoption of the 2025 budget for Paris. As everyone knows, the fiscal year of corporation runs from October 1st to September 30th, and a budget needs to be submitted to Paris by tomorrow to meet the deadline of the state 60 days in advance. The budget that's in your packets includes the actual last year numbers. Those are audited numbers from the audit from Lumsden and McCormick. The current estimated 2024 budget includes what we have spent to date, as well as anticipated expenses before September 30th. I think the big thing with all of these budgeted numbers is that the revenue coming in pretty much equals the expenditures coming out. It is a positive revenue because we are getting rental and financing income coming into the corporation in both the loan repayments that are coming in, as well as the bank interest that is accruing on the financial budgets or the financials that we have currently from the 4 EPA grants that we have. Going through this quickly, the numbers for projects are included in the federal subsidies grants on the revenue side, and they're also captured under the grants and donations on the expenditure side. The one strange thing about the way Paris records budgets versus how the audit encumbers the funds and shows the financials is that you'll see in 2023, the number is quite high for revenue, and that's because that takes into account the loan principal repayments that we've received. But the Paris budgeted numbers for future years do not take into account principal repayments. So that's why the numbers look so significantly different. It's just the way the accounting system that's used by the two different systems. We projected out for 2025. We're going to be in a similar situation. We did get additional grant money from EPA totaling $3.5 million that becomes effective October 1st. So you'll see in 2025, we're estimating that we're going to spend about $2.14 million in projects. And that includes the balance of the Junior's Truck Stop project, the 2020 River Road Wheatfield subgrants, part of the loan that was recommended for approval at the last board meeting for 5222 Lockport Junction Road in Cambria, as well as a potential loan in the city of Lockport that I am working on for $600,000. Going out into the expenditures, you can see that they pretty much match out to the revenues. Again, the money's coming in from EPA. For 26, 27, and 28, it's a very similar situation. We'll be drawing down on the both grants that we have active for new projects, and then the revenue and expenses balance each other out.
Questions?
So just so that I understand, so typically the grants we get are based on what we apply for and projects that we think are coming. So in 2027, how do we come up with a number like that? In other words, it's significantly less. Is that based on what projects we think are coming? Or is that based on our assumptions regarding grant funding from the EPA? Is there some reason to think that that's going to change, or is this based on projects that we think will be coming?
Yeah, so it's kind of both. So for 27 and 28, the $985,000 in revenue, and then the $900,000 under the expenditures, that is for potential new projects, and that's based upon the existing EPA money that we have. Because brownfield cleanups take multiple years, I anticipate that, we may have one project of like $1.8 million, and so I split that between 27 and 28. That doesn't take into account any new additional money that we get from EPA. So
That was gonna be my question.
Yeah, so EPA, they have grant rounds every year. But in order to qualify for money, you have to have had so much of the money, existing money committed, and you have to have a proven track record that you can spend the money in a timely manner. So for the new grant that will become effective October 1st, it's a 5-year term. So we have 5 years to spend that $3.5 million, which is spread out over this time period. So by the end of 28, we'll spend all of that money. Because I think that's a reasonable assessment, because we've always we're either right on target or a little bit ahead of schedule with the money.
But pushing this out, these numbers could very well change.
Yeah, and the other thing too that this budget doesn't take into account is all of the loans that we have out, the repayment of those loans.
Yeah.
This takes into account the interest, but it doesn't take into account the principal. And so that's why in your packets, I also included, which I feel is a more accurate representation of our financial status. And, this is kind of next on the agenda, but.
You mean the summary?
The summary, yeah, because
the
this
actual-
shows what we actually have, in the 4 separate bank accounts. Because what we do is for each one of our grants, they have to all be tracked separately. So we have 4 separate bank accounts, or we will have 4 because, the 3.5 million we just got, that'll be a new bank account.
So your summary includes the capital grab back?
Yes.
Because of the payments?
Correct.
Which can't be included in income because it's not considered income for tax purposes.
Right, which is, it's bizarre because it's going out, but it's coming back in. So the way PAAA captures it is different than how our auditors capture it, which is different than how EPA captures it, so.
Because the 3.5 million that we're getting in 24.
It actually becomes effective in 25.
25. So when you look at 25 adopted.
Yep.
It shows the grants at 2.144 million.
Yes.
And is that because we spread the revenue out as we use it?
Yeah,
It
so,
doesn't say 3.5, obviously it says 2.1.
correct, because it's a drawdown basis on the actual expenses. So as
So
we
we
get
think the
invoices in-
expenditures will justify acceptance of 2.14
Yes.
million in grant monies, because we'll be able to spend that, and the rest will remain in the 2024 Brownfield revolving low fund grant, and it'll show up as an available fund. 3.5 minus what we spend.
Yes.
Next year.
So we actually have, in the 2016 grant, that will be sunsetting on September 30th of this year. We're using up the rest of that money, as you can see, pretty much everything has been committed, so that will be closed out. We do have $63,000 left of that grant, and we have payments coming in every month. We have a couple loans in repayment. So the 22 grants, the majority of that money has already been allocated because of the 2.4 million that was recommended a couple months ago. So in 25, that budget is pretty much going to be using up a lot of that 22 grant. And then, you know, as a new project comes in, by the time it gets approved and all the documentation is in place, I don't think we're going to spend too much of that new grant in 25. The bulk of that is going to come in 26.
I mean, just a question, it's not much to do with that, but when we get, we obviously the grants that we send out, we don't get the money back on those, and they don't come back to us, but the loans that went out,
Yes.
we recapture some of the capital.
Yep.
But that capital that comes back to us is not subject to the same requirements as the original grant. In other words, it is, I thought we could use it for almost, no,
So they're restricted funds.
It's restricted funds. So
it's still restricted funds.
it's still,
Okay.
it's still restricted, and we still have to report on it and submit, you know, annual reports to EPA, and even every invoice we spend out of that has to be approved by EPA still.
Okay.
So it's, there are two differences though. One is for the original RLF, that is a closed out RLF, and so what that's called is a post closeout income, because, you know, that's money that was back from principal and interest of loans that got repaid. You don't have to, for projects that are funded out of that, they are not subject to the prevailing wages. And they are not subject to the cap. So EPA has specific caps in place for site-specific uses. One of those in the newer terms and conditions, it has it's $500,000 per site over the life of EPA grants. So going way back to our assessment grants, only up to $500,000 can be spent on the site without a waiver. But if we were to use this money for that purpose, then it's not subject to that. And then the other thing too is that post-closeout income can be used for assessments and planning, cleanup planning, profits planning.
So when that money comes, when the capital recapture comes back, do we also get a renewed percentage to go towards administration expenses?
Yeah, so
Okay.
there's no cap on, and even in the new grants, they've separated out admin versus programmatic. And so time spent on like projects and direct grant implementation is not subject to like a 5% or 10% or anything like that, because it's not considered administrative, it's programmatic.
I sort of heard through the grapevine that they've become a little more stringent in making sure about what you spend your hours on and how many hours are spent. A little more hourly.
It's hourly, right? And
Yeah.
so
They were
anything
before,
that,
it wasn't quite as,
right, is stringent. So
I'm just doing this for,
yeah, so what I do is I fill out anything that's charged to the grant, and Margaret submitted some of those, like it's based upon hours worked, and so I have timesheets and I put in, you know, like X number of hours, and you multiply by a rate and fringe, and then that's what you submit to EPA.
except for the fact that it takes time to do that, I'm sure you're gonna have a problem going overboard on the hours that you spend, so.
Yeah, and you know, because we only take like a certain amount of that, it's really a lot more time than what's claimed, yeah.
I just felt that they should understand that there's another small change that's been made.
Yeah, so it's not like it's you know, you can't say, oh, we're gonna take $50,000 and use it for whatever we want.
It's not a free for all.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not, okay.
Definitely not.
Is that a legal term?
What's that?
Is that a legal
Free
term?
for all.
Legal term.
I think so, yeah.
Now, that's the most recent. It's called, and what do they call it? You have to put the legal stuff now in plain language?
Layman's terms.
Layman's terms.
Any other questions? Nope, okay, motion.
I'm good, I'll move it.
I'll second. Call the roll, please, on the budget.
Chairman Restaino,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Updegrove,
Yes.
Secretary Casal.
Yes.
All complete.
Thank you so much. Amy, your business.
Okay, so I just did the budget update. That was that other sheet that was in your packets. So just quickly, some project updates. We are still moving forward on the subgrant to 2020 River Road in Wheatfield. I have a meeting set up tomorrow with the Army Corps of Engineers and DEC, there's wetland issues at the property that we've been working on the cleanup design on, and we have to figure out those issues first. So we're being smart and hopefully hash some of it out, figure out what permits are going to be needed. But that one is going pretty well. For 624 River Road in North Tonawanda, we just got another drawdown of that project. I don't know if anybody's been by there, but they are going quickly at the redevelopment. Most of that is almost done, and so now they're just finishing up some monitoring and stuff like that. They've used up almost all of their $1 million loan, so we're just going through some final eligible expenses, and so that one can be closed out. Junior's Truck Stop in Niagara Falls. I've been working closely with the city, and actually just had a meeting again this morning with Kevin, Forma, and Jess to go over some of the issues. That project, contamination is much more extensive there than was originally expected. This board initially provided $125,000 grants. That was increased based on contamination that was found and some additional tanks that were found at the site. The grant was increased to $315,000. So we have been working on spending that down. I've been out to the site a number of times with DEC, and unfortunately, the way that the contamination is there, it's petroleum contamination, and so we are bound by what DEC will and will not allow for to stay on the property because of state regulations. And based upon some additional exploratory work that we did, there is a significant amount of contamination that has to be removed. Because petroleum, there isn't much of a choice. The state will not sign off on the additional work. The state will not sign off on the site being cleaned unless the additional work is done. I had a conversation with EPA, and if DEC doesn't sign off on it, EPA won't sign off on it. So it's kind of a quandary. And Mark Cerrone is the contractor on the site. So we did some exploratory testing with DEC on site. I was on site, and based upon the cost of what DEC will accept, it looks like it's going to be about an additional $259,000 to fully remediate that site so that it can be reused. There is funding available. As you know, you can see we do have some funds. And talking with EPA, we're going to have to go through a waiver process, which I will work on because again, we're over that $500,000. One of the suggestions that I have is that we tap into the existing bank account balance to pay for that, because if we utilize one of the brand new grant that's coming, there's going to be a lot of extra requirements because it is under the Build Act. And I think at this point, we don't want to have to rebid the project and go through the whole thing again, which we may have to do under the Build Act. I'm going to be working with the city and BRS and our financial advisors to kind of put everything together to make a recommendation to this board. On talking with Kevin, it sounds like it could be earliest we go to the city council is the beginning of September. So ideally, because it's an open spill site and DEC is kind of pushing to get this taken care of, this board would have a meeting towards the end of August to review and consider loan modification. Provided we can get the waiver and everything we need from EPA and all the recommendations in place. So there's no action needed at this meeting, but I just wanted to let everybody know kind of what I'm working on and what may be coming down with that.
So when you do come to this board in August, you would be talking about the use of the original grant fund?
That is my recommendation, just because there's less restrictions on that money as far as cleanup. They are doing prevailing wages anyway. I've done the Davis-Bacon interviews. I've been out there 4 times doing interviews. So every time they stop and start, that's considered a new phase by EPA, so I have to go out and do more interviews. But that would be my recommendation. I want to talk to EPA a little bit more and see what they think, but they don't like having bank balances over $500,000. They want explanations as to why there's that kind of money sitting there. So I think it would be good in multiple ways to use that funding. But there is other money we can tap into for whatever reason they say no.
Any other questions on this update?
Nope.
Scott, anything that you want to add for us today?
No, there's no attorney business to address today.
Okay then, and the next meeting date will be set.
Probably towards the end of August. Margaret will send out a doodle poll. Okay.
Okay, great. Motion to adjourn.
Oh, second.
Thank you so much. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Scott.
Thanks.